For several weeks, the Israeli media has been dominated by speculation regarding a potential resumption of hostilities with Iran. What began as cautious analysis has intensified considerably, with reports from both Israel and the United States suggesting military action could commence within days.
Now, the dominant story in the Israeli media has been about a possible return to hostilities with Iran. But speculation has now become more intense, as it has in the United States, that this could occur within days. President Trump has stopped making threats with specific deadlines, a tactic which has repeatedly fallen flat with the Iranians. But US officials and others in the region reportedly believe a decision is imminent following his return from Beijing. Without doubt, longer-term peace negotiations have barely progressed, and both sides see them as at a stalemate. The question is what the strategic goals and targets of such renewed strikes would be. They could be mainly a punitive assault, a shock and awe option, attacking civilian infrastructure like bridges and power plants, designed to allow Trump to claim victory and withdraw. Or more likely, it could be one designed to weaken Iran's key leverage points, its control over the Strait of Hormuz and its nuclear stockpile.
President Trump has notably shifted away from issuing threats with specific deadlines, a strategy that has proven ineffective with Iranian leadership in the past. However, according to officials in Washington and regional diplomats, a decision on military action may be imminent following the president's return from Beijing. The diplomatic landscape presents a complex picture. Long-term peace negotiations between the relevant parties have made minimal progress, with both sides characterizing the talks as being at an impasse.
President Trump says that the clock is ticking for Iran, urging them to come to the table before it's too late.
I meant Memorial Day. Sorry. I didn't want you to wait till September. He spoke with Israel's prime minister as the two leaders reportedly weigh resuming military action on the regime.
Lucas Tomlinson is live in Dubai with the latest. Hey, Lucas.
Good morning, Ainsley. Good morning, guys. This appears to be the final warning from President Trump, warning Iran that if it doesn't make a deal, he's going to end the ceasefire and resume bombing and full-scale combat operations, perhaps with Israel as well, posting on Truth Social, quote, "For Iran, the clock is ticking, and they better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence," signed President DJT. And Axios reporting Trump warns Iran the clock is ticking, as we just heard, until U.S. launches harder strikes. U.S. officials say Trump wants a deal to end the war, but Iran's rejection of his many demands and refusal to make meaningful concessions on its nuclear program has put the military option back on the table.
This stalemate raises critical questions about the strategic objectives and potential targets of any renewed military campaign. Analysts suggest two primary scenarios: a punitive strike designed to demonstrate force and enable a declared victory, followed by withdrawal, or a more targeted operation aimed at degrading Iran's strategic leverage, particularly its influence over the Strait of Hormuz and its nuclear capabilities. The timing of these developments coincides with significant diplomatic activity. President Trump has been urging Iranian leadership to engage in negotiations before opportunities for peaceful resolution diminish. Reports indicate that he has consulted with Israel's prime minister regarding coordinated military options should diplomatic channels fail to produce meaningful results. The administration has signaled through official channels that the window for negotiated settlement is narrowing, with statements emphasizing the urgency of the moment. The Strait of Hormuz remains a focal point of strategic concern. This narrow waterway serves as a critical choke point for global energy supplies, and any disruption would have far-reaching economic consequences. Iran's ability to influence traffic through this corridor represents a significant bargaining chip in international negotiations, making it a likely consideration in any military planning. Similarly, questions surrounding Iran's nuclear program continue to drive international pressure, with verification and enrichment limits remaining central to diplomatic discussions. The convergence of these factors, the stalled negotiations, the strategic importance of Hormuz, the nuclear question, and the administration's stated timeline, creates an environment of heightened uncertainty. Regional allies are watching closely, international markets are responding to the uncertainty, and diplomatic channels are working overtime to prevent escalation. The coming days will likely prove decisive in determining whether the current trajectory leads toward renewed conflict or a last-minute diplomatic breakthrough. President Trump's recent visit to China occurred against a backdrop of significant domestic and international pressure. The administration sought a visible foreign policy achievement at a moment when the Iran conflict has generated substantial controversy, including criticism from within the president's own political coalition. Traditional alliances have shown signs of strain, and international forums have proceeded without full American participation. These circumstances created an environment in which a successful bilateral engagement with Beijing carried particular importance. The summit was intended to project American diplomatic strength and demonstrate the administration's capacity to manage one of the world's most consequential bilateral relationships. The planned optics suggested a narrative of mutual respect and high-level engagement, with full state ceremony underscoring the significance of the relationship. However, the information environment surrounding the visit rapidly became contested terrain, with multiple narratives competing for public attention. During the formal state banquet, a brief video clip circulated widely on social media platforms, appearing to show the president leaning toward documents near his Chinese counterpart's position. The footage, lasting approximately 2 seconds, generated immediate speculation and was shared millions of times across international platforms before comprehensive context became available. Extended footage subsequently indicated that the folder in question bore American markings and appeared to contain the president's own briefing materials, rather than belonging to the Chinese delegation. This episode illustrates important dynamics regarding information dissemination in contemporary diplomacy. The initial interpretation, that of inappropriate curiosity regarding another leader's documents, traveled significantly further and faster than subsequent clarifications. This pattern, observable across political contexts and national boundaries, demonstrates the challenges facing accurate reporting in an environment optimized for rapid sharing rather than careful verification. The Chinese information ecosystem, including state media and social platforms, amplified the initial framing considerably, contributing to a narrative that served Beijing's diplomatic interests. The broader significance extends beyond any single viral moment. The administration faced a coordinated information environment in which multiple narratives emerged simultaneously. The banquet footage, accounts of private diplomatic discussions, and intelligence assessments regarding regional strategy. Each element, considered individually, might have represented a manageable news cycle. Their convergence within a compressed time frame created cumulative effects that shaped public perception of the summit's outcomes. Diplomatic protocol and visual storytelling merit particular attention in analyzing state visits of this magnitude. Arrival ceremonies, staging decisions, and photographic positioning are never improvised. They represent carefully considered choices within the vocabulary of international relations. Experienced observers interpret these signals precisely, reading meaning into arrangements that casual viewers might overlook. The visual narrative emerging from Beijing suggested an asymmetry in the bilateral dynamic that contrasted with the administration's intended messaging. The information environment surrounding the Beijing summit included several substantive elements warranting careful examination. A reported Pentagon intelligence assessment, circulated as the president arrived in China, documented Beijing's strategic approach to the regional conflict involving Iran. The assessment outlined how Chinese policy has leveraged the situation to advance specific objectives, presenting alternative frameworks to American-led initiatives, strengthening relationships with nations affected by regional instability, and observing operational patterns for strategic planning purposes. The timing of this assessment's emergence created particular challenges for the administration's summit objectives. The document suggested that the nation hosting the president was systematically utilizing American policy decisions to advance competing strategic interests. This context complicated efforts to project unilateral diplomatic strength, introducing questions about leverage and negotiating position into public discourse surrounding the meetings. Additionally, accounts circulated regarding the substance of private discussions between the American and Chinese delegations. These accounts, which gained significant traction online, describe potential policy positions on trade and technology matters discussed in closed sessions. The precise accuracy of these accounts remain subject to verification challenges inherent in reporting on private diplomatic exchanges. However, their rapid circulation and uptake by analysts and commentators ensured their integration into the public narrative, regardless of definitive confirmation. The phenomenon of leaked diplomatic accounts and intelligence assessments intersecting with high-level state visits represents an increasingly common feature of international relations. The strategic value of information, whether accurate, partially accurate, or contested, has grown substantially in an era of instantaneous global communication. Nations have developed sophisticated capabilities for shaping information environments, utilizing both traditional media and digital platforms to advance preferred narratives. China's demonstrated capacity to influence the information ecosystem surrounding the summit merits particular attention. The convergence of viral content, circulated accounts of private meetings, and strategically timed document releases within a 48-hour window suggests coordination rather than coincidence. This capability reflects substantial investment in information operations and indicates that future high-stakes diplomatic engagements will occur simultaneously in physical meeting spaces and global information environments. The asymmetry in these capabilities presents strategic considerations for American diplomacy. With traditional soft power mechanisms facing various pressures, the capacity to counter competing narratives in real-time information environments requires continued development. The Beijing summit demonstrated that diplomatic outcomes increasingly depend not solely on agreements reached in conference rooms, but on the stories that circulate about those agreements and the contexts in which they are placed. The Beijing summit and its aftermath illuminate several structural challenges confronting contemporary American foreign policy. The administration entered negotiations with visible requirements: Chinese cooperation or non-interference regarding regional instability, stabilization of critical shipping corridors, and a diplomatic achievement to demonstrate policy efficacy. When negotiating counterparts recognize such requirements, leverage dynamics shift accordingly, potentially affecting outcomes regardless of specific concessions discussed. Beijing's apparent understanding of this asymmetry informed its approach to the summit and its information management. The Chinese delegation possessed relevant intelligence assessments, awareness of domestic political pressures, and observation of international alliance patterns. This context shaped both the substantive discussions and the parallel information campaign, creating conditions in which the narrative surrounding the visit became as significant as any agreements potentially reached. The information dimension reveals evolving strategic capabilities that extend beyond any single administration or bilateral relationship. China's demonstrated ability to transform diplomatic moments into globally circulating narratives through platform amplification, strategic releases, and visual framing represents a developed instrument of statecraft. This capability, refined over years of investment, was deployed with notable precision during the Beijing summit, establishing conditions for future engagements. For American diplomacy, this presents both immediate and long-term considerations. The traditional equation of diplomatic success, weighted heavily toward formal agreements and communiques, now must account for parallel information environments where narratives form rapidly and corrections rarely achieve equivalent reach. The visual language of statecraft, arrival ceremonies, banquet seating, handshake positioning, carries amplified significance when subject to instantaneous global interpretation and selective framing. Domestically, the summit's reception intersects with established political narratives regarding presidential leadership and diplomatic efficacy. The administration's political identity has emphasized deal-making capacity and strength in international negotiations. The information environment surrounding Beijing, characterized by viral moments, circulated accounts of private discussions, and intelligence assessments documenting strategic competition, created public impressions that complicated these established narratives. The challenge of narrative control following high-stakes diplomacy has become a permanent feature of international relations. The administration faces the task of framing summit outcomes in ways that resonate with domestic and international audiences already exposed to competing interpretations. This challenge is compounded when information operations by negotiating counterparts have successfully established initial framing that subsequent clarifications struggle to displace. Looking forward, several conclusions emerge from this episode. First, diplomatic engagements with major powers now necessarily include information warfare dimensions requiring preparation and response capabilities. Second, the asymmetry between rapid viral content and careful verification creates persistent challenges for accurate public understanding. Third, visual and narrative elements of statecraft carry strategic weight equivalent to substantive policy positions in shaping perceptions of diplomatic outcomes. The intersection of these factors with ongoing regional tensions, particularly regarding Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, and nuclear proliferation, creates a complex operating environment for American foreign policy. Decisions regarding potential military action, diplomatic engagement, and strategic communication must account for both traditional statecraft and information environment dynamics. The Beijing summit demonstrated that these dimensions are inseparable in contemporary international relations, with consequences that extend far beyond any single bilateral meeting. As the administration considers next steps regarding regional tensions and potential military options, the information lessons of Beijing remain relevant. Any future action or negotiation will occur within global information environments where narrative control is actively contested, where visual moments carry strategic significance, and where the stories that circulate about events may prove as consequential as the events themselves. Preparing for this reality represents an essential component of effective diplomacy in the current era.